When Trinity Church rose in Newport in 1726, it brought a taste of England to Rhode Island. Its gorgeous Georgian body and English Baroque steeple resembled Christopher Wren's great London creations, proof that Britain's civilization was crossing the sea. Once fragile outposts on the brink of annihilation, the American colonies were thriving. But what was this young society becoming? A New England flourishing under the British flag? A gear in the Empire's machinery? Or something new? Join me on this tour of historical places in the United States. This is the story of the colonies. In the 16th century, the Empire of Spain dominated America. But after the shocking defeat of the Spanish Armada, the English saw their chance to build a New World colony. In December of 1606, 3 ships sailed for Virginia, the land in between the Spanish and French colonies. Their mission was to found Jamestown, a place to harvest New World resources like gold and furs. The settlers cleverly chose a site safely distant from Spanish ships, but ineptly settled next to a swamp. The site proved unhealthy, and the colonists themselves were a problem. Most weren't farmers, but gold-seeking gentlemen adventurers, a group uniquely unqualified for the labor needed for survival. Jamestown acquired some food from the indigenous Powhatan Confederacy, but it turned out the colonists weren't even good at making friends. The Powhatan put Jamestown under siege. Their main supply ship couldn't make it, and their meals came down to mice and shoe leather. Even with hundreds of new arrivals, only 12% survived the starvation of the third winter. Thus, the colony was a catastrophic failure. That is until 1616, thanks to a new addiction sweeping London. John Rolfe discovered that the tobacco plant grew phenomenally in Virginia. Welcome news, as it was thought to be quite healthy. Tobacco became the brown gold that brought a steady flow of settlers to the colony. A second group of newcomers were enslaved African laborers, often captured by rival Africans, sold to European slave traders, and finally brought to American plantations. "500 miles away, a single ship sailed north along Cape Cod. It carried settlers of an entirely different kind than the Jamestown colonists. Pilgrims, a people on a spiritual journey. These Protestant separatists set sail for America not for gold, but to build a pure society rooted in the Bible. Their target was the Hudson River, but storms turned them north to the Cape Cod area. In December, the 102 passengers of the Mayflower disembarked at a place they named Plymouth. Tradition held that they first stepped ashore on Plymouth Rock. They began to build the oldest enduring English settlement in the United States. Its Leiden Street is the oldest continuously occupied street in the country. At a lower latitude than England, the Pilgrims were surprised by the viciously cold winter, and like in Jamestown, deaths began to tally. By early spring, only half of the group remained alive. It was at this point when a Native American named Samoset walked into their camp, greeted them in English, and asked for a beer. He had learned their language from encounters with English fishermen farther north. The Wampanoag people saved them, teaching them local methods to plant and fish. Plymouth even made a formal alliance with their sachem, Massasoit. That autumn, the Pilgrims and 90 of Massasoit's warriors celebrated a 3-day harvest festival. Within the first year, the Pilgrims built a defensive fort on Burial Hill, from which timbers were salvaged to make the Harlow Old Fort House. The Jabez Howland House claims to be the only house left in Plymouth where Pilgrims actually lived. With this nucleus at Plymouth, New England began to grow. At Cape Ann, near Tablet Rock, Plymouth colonists helped start a small fishing village. It eventually grew into the city of Gloucester, known as America's oldest seaport. Other commercially minded Englishmen moved north and founded Strawberry Bank, later Portsmouth, on a site rich with berries. The largest wave came in 1630. Facing pressure to submit to the Church of England, John Winthrop led 700 Puritans to start the Massachusetts Bay Colony. They intended to build a pure and godly society, one that would inspire the mother country by its radiant example. They called their capital Tri-Mountain, after the 3 hills on the peninsula it sat on. To make it feel more like England, just months later, they renamed it Boston. Puritan life revolved around the church building, or meeting house, usually the first communal structure built in a settlement. It could serve as a place for worship, government, and even business. The Old Ship Meeting House is the oldest continuously used church in North America. Wanting everyone to be able to read the Bible, the Puritans set up schools, raising literacy rates above even those in Europe. In 1636, they went further, founding Harvard University near Boston for the training of ministers. At first, the colonists lived in temporary shelters, but soon built sturdy, timber-framed houses in the medieval style they knew from England. New England's cold climate preserved an uncommonly large number of these early buildings. When the Puritans came to America, it was not to defend some idea of freedom, but to build a culture that they believed in. When Minister Roger Williams had dangerous ideas, like a separation of church and state, and honest dealings with the Native Americans, he was banished in the dead of winter. Fleeing south, he settled on land he fairly purchased from the Narragansett tribe. Williams named his settlement Providence, out of thanks to God for preserving him through his exile. He opened his colony as a haven for misfits. His church there was the first Baptist congregation in America. The church has been meeting continuously since 1638. He was soon joined by Anne Hutchinson. She was banished from her home in Boston for challenging male church authority and claiming direct revelation from God. She and her followers moved south, founding Portsmouth on the actual island, then called Rhode Island. Newport soon became Rhode Island's most important settlement, upholding the local tradition of liberty. The town welcomed a diversity of congregations, including Baptists, Jews, Quakers, and others. The oldest structure in Rhode Island is Newport's White Horse Tavern. Like the Rhode Island exiles, Puritan minister Thomas Hooker parted ways with Massachusetts. Looking to build a more democratic society, he moved south to the Connecticut River. In 1635, Puritans planted themselves at Saybrook Colony, near the mouth of the Connecticut. While some Dutchmen had already claimed the area, they withdrew after seeing the English brought cannon. Records state that the displayed Dutch coat of arms was replaced with a menacing smiley face. Saybrook became the first home of Yale, founded to train clergymen for their Christian society. In 1716, Yale moved west to New Haven, which by then had merged with Saybrook into the colony of Connecticut. Nearby, Minister Henry Whitfield and 24 Puritan families founded Guilford, Connecticut. The indigenous people of the area were happy to accommodate the newcomers, and even helped Whitfield gather stone for his house, the oldest surviving home in the state. In those early days, it served as a home, church, and in case of attack, a fortress with 2-foot-thick stone walls. The Puritans may have been driven by faith, but they quickly developed a thriving commerce. Within the original borders of Saybrook Colony, the riverside settlement that became Essex grew into a vital shipbuilding center, powered by generations of skilled craftsmen. For over 200 years, Pratt family blacksmiths forged iron tools at their Essex home. The Wampanoag leader Massasoit had long befriended the English, but his son Metacom less so. Metacom, also known as King Philip, was angered by the loss of his brother, who suspiciously died in English custody. With the unceasing arrival of Englishmen onto the continent, by 1675 Metacom was able to rally a huge native alliance, ready to bring the reign of the Puritans to an end. In June, they struck, hitting 52 out of New England's 92 settlements, and completely destroying 12. The Neshoba praying Indians, Christian converts, were caught in the middle. When war broke out, conquered lawyer John Hoare sheltered 58 of them on land that would become Louisa May Alcott's orchard house. Despite living peaceably, angry colonists forcibly moved them to a bleak internment on Deer Island. Metacom had little patience for dissent. He once executed a man for suggesting peace, even when that man was the brother of his close advisor, John Alderman. But soon, the native alliance crumbled. After the Mohawk dealt a surprise attack that shattered the Wampanoag, many of Philip's allies switched sides. In August of 1676, Captain Benjamin Church struck Metacom's base at Mount Hope. John Alderman delivered the fatal bullet to King Philip. The New England colonists had outlasted a serious opponent, and despite losses, were now stronger than ever before. While England held Virginia and the northern colonies, the land between them was crowded with European contestants. In 1625, the business-minded Dutch planted New Netherland, with New Amsterdam as its capital, a rowdy town full of violence and vice. But at the mouth of the Hudson, it was a perfect base for controlling the fur trade. From early on, New Amsterdam was one of the most cosmopolitan towns in the New World. One resident reported 18 different languages could be heard on its streets. Naturally, its success drew competition. In 1638, Sweden launched a colony along the Delaware River. It was governed by the 400-pound Johann Prince, who the indigenous Lenape reverently called Big Tub. Near the future site of Philadelphia, a congregation going back to New Sweden built the oldest surviving church in Pennsylvania, in which Betsy Ross was later married. New Sweden cut into the Dutch fur trade so effectively, Governor Peter Stuyvesant of New Netherland gobbled up the Swedish colony in a bloodless conquest in 1655. The Dutch victory was short-lived. Just 9 years later, an English fleet sent by the Duke of York arrived to take control of New Amsterdam. The Dutch citizens refused to risk their lives in battle, forcing the fuming Governor Stuyvesant to surrender without a fight. New Amsterdam became New York in honor of its new proprietor. And the entire eastern seaboard was now firmly under English control. In the Middle Colonies, the Dutch merchant gave way to a new kind of settler, the Quaker. Pacifists committed to radical equality and obedience to their inner light, the Quakers were scorned in England. Fortunately, King Charles II granted a vast tract of land to William Penn, a high-profile Quaker convert. Penn had been expelled from Oxford University and even imprisoned in the Tower of London for his Quaker beliefs. Now, Penn intended his colony of Pennsylvania to be a refuge for his oppressed brethren, and a holy experiment in peaceful coexistence of all religions. He first landed at Newcastle in 1682, a budding hub that came to anchor Delaware. But Newcastle was soon eclipsed by the explosive growth of Penn's own project just upriver. Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. Fueled by a utopian vision of equality, the city boomed so rapidly that by the 1750s, it surpassed Boston as the largest in the colonies. Outside of the cities, isolated homesteads became a familiar sight. The Mabee Farm, dating from 1705, seemed remote among the woods and Mohawk neighbors, but the river tied it to wider networks of trade. Within its household were 14 enslaved African Americans, a reminder that slavery reached into the colonial North. Frontier life had its hazards, but so did everywhere else. Smallpox haunted the colonists, spreading fastest in crowded towns. The cure was bloodletting, which drained away the disease-causing matter. Lucky patients lived to do the treatment again. Folk remedies for ailments were often based on symbolism. Kidney beans, were good for the kidneys. Wearing wolf fangs cured fright. Daily routines were also governed by signs. They used the phases of the moon to determine the right time to plant crops, build fences, or slaughter hogs. Strong belief in the mystical side of life was theatrically shown in Salem, Massachusetts. In 1692, Salem's efforts to stay witch-free led to a slew of trials in which spectral evidence chiefly guided the verdicts. 19 men and women were hanged, and one horrifically pressed to death. The attempt backfired in the long run. The home of Judge Jonathan Corwin, a witch hunter, is now ingeniously dubbed the Witch House, and swarms with occult tourists. Compared to Europe, which executed tens of thousands of witches in the same century, the American record was enlightened. Protestant churches fueled progress in learning, founding 8 out of the 9 colonial universities. Founded next after Harvard, William and Mary brought higher education to the South. In the 1730s, many felt that religion in the colonies had become cold. Their answer was the First Great Awakening, a movement that brought fresh intensity into Christianity. Ministers stirred huge audiences with powerful sermons on the town green. No one embodied this more than George Whitefield, whose booming voice and captivating delivery drew nearly everyone when he came to town. It was remarked that Whitefield could move any audience to tears simply by saying, "Mesopotamia." The awakening changed the tone of American religion, and by crossing regional lines, gave a powerful, shared experience to the colonies. In 1707, England and Scotland united to form the Kingdom of Great Britain. Its growing power paralleled the prosperity of the colonies, which exceeded 1 million people by the mid-1700s. Stately Georgian architecture brought British style to America, dignifying homes, churches, and government buildings. But amid their success, a powerful adversary threatened the colonies: the Kingdom of France and her Native American allies. Lying between British and French territories, the Ohio River Valley was desired by both sides in the 1750s. To enforce its claim, France built a chain of fortresses in the valley, including at the strategic Forks of the Ohio, modern-day Pittsburgh. Virginia responded by sending the 22-year-old George Washington to challenge them. The ensuing clash in the wilderness sparked a global war between the empires of Britain and France. The frontier became a battleground. In the Mohawk Valley, Irish-born William Johnson relied on his good relations with the Iroquois to lead a joint force of Colonials and Mohawk. Their target was Lake Champlain, a key gateway to Canada. But at Lake George, French forces surprised the British column. Johnson took a bullet to the leg, and his Mohawk ally Theanogwin was bayoneted. Still, Johnson's forces managed to repel the attack and capture the French commander. Hailed as a hero, Johnson was knighted, but unfortunately had failed to prevent France from securing the region. By 1757, France completed Fort Carillon, a daunting star fortress overlooking Lake Champlain. On the southern frontier, settlers faced the constant threat of raids. North Carolina built Fort Dobbs at the edge of English settlement to shelter families and house about 50 provincial troops. On the night of February 27, 1760, Cherokee warriors attacked the fort, but were repelled after a close quarters fight. The war's turning point came when General James Wolfe attacked Quebec City, the keystone of Canada. Learning of a secret path up the cliffs to the plains behind the city, Wolfe led the British to victory in a brief but fierce battle. French garrisons further up the waterway, like the fort on the Straits of Mackinac, were cut off from supplies and gradually surrendered their untenable posts. The Treaty of Paris in 1763 expanded British territories, ending the threat of France to the colonies. The French and Indian War was the colonists' proudest hour under British rule. They had thrown themselves into the war effort and emerged victorious. The Americans now had a shared experience fighting together and alongside imperial troops. More than ever, they were joyful members of the British Empire. But not for long. Not for long at all.